بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. In our previous lesson we looked at the grave, which is either a garden from the gardens of paradise or a pit from the pits of hellfire. And this dealt with the barzakh, the situation in the barzakh, which is the stage after death in this world. And the main point that we put across in that lesson was that these are from the affairs of the unseen, and the intellect cannot grasp these kinds of issues. And because the hearing and the seeing cannot experience what is unseen, therefore the aql, the mind, the reason, cannot fathom these realities. So it is from reason to accept that reason is limited. It is from aql to accept that the aql is limited. And so the issue with respect to these issues is simply at-taslim, al-iman, wat-taslim, to have faith in them and to submit to that which has come in the text. So continuing from this point, Imam al-Tahaawiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَنُؤْمِنُ بِالْبَعْثِ وَجَزَاءِ الْأَعْمَالِ يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ وَالْعَرْضِ وَالْحِسَابِ وَقِرَاءَةِ الْكِتَابِ وَالثَّوَابِ وَالْعِقَابِ وَالصِّرَاطِ وَالْمِيزَانِ. So he's mentioned here a collection of things, all of which are related to Yawm al-Qiyamah, the day of judgment. So he says, and we believe in al-Ba'ath, which is the resurrection, وَجَزَاءِ الْأَعْمَالِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, and the recompense for the deeds on the day of judgment. وَالْعَرْضِ وَالْحِسَابِ, which means the presentation of the deeds and the reckoning for the deeds. The deeds will be presented to a person and then the accounting for those deeds. وَقِرَاءَةِ الْكِتَابِ, and the reading of the book. Each person shall read his own book of deeds. وَالثَّوَابِ وَالْعِقَابِ, and then the reward and the punishment. وَالصِّرَاطِ وَالْمِيزَانِ, and the passing over the bridge, and likewise al-mizan, the weighing of the scales. So Shaykh says here, Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh, he says, وَنُؤْمِنُ بِالْبَعْثِ, this is a rukn. This belief here in the resurrection is a rukn from the arkan of iman, from the pillars of iman. And it is obligatory to have faith in this, and the faith of no person is valid or correct, nor his Islam, without belief in al-yawm al-akhir, the final day. So whoever rejects al-ba'ath, the resurrection, or al-yawm al-akhir, the final day, he is a disbeliever. فَإِنَّهُ كَافِرٌ بِاللَّهِ جَلَّ جَلَالُهُ, he is a disbeliever in Allah, the lofty be His majesty. So this is from the great pillars of Islam and Iman. And this means, in summary, it means that the people will be resurrected and returned to Allah, the mighty and majestic. Now, this belief in the final day, it has many other details connected to it. So when we say that we believe in the final day, in the day of resurrection, there are many other connected issues that are part and parcel of this belief. And from them are those which were mentioned by At-Tahaawi in this list. And the list isn't in any order. You can see that it's not in any particular order. So from the affairs that are part and parcel of belief in the last day is that they will be raised from their graves. Their souls will be returned to their bodies. To have belief in the deeds, everybody will be rewarded for the deeds. To believe that the deeds will be presented to each person. Like your deeds, whatever you did, will be presented to you. That there will be accounting for these deeds. that every person will read his book of deeds, he will be given to read from his book, to believe in the reward, and to believe in the punishment, and to believe in the sirat, the bridge over hellfire, to believe in the mizan, the balance, the scales, to believe in paradise, to believe in hellfire, to believe in the hawd, the drinking pool. All of these issues are connected to Yawmul Qiyamah and belief in Al-Yawmul Akhir, belief in the final day. So, but if we were to summarize the essence of the belief in Yawmul Qiyamah, the basic element of belief that a person must have for his iman to be valid, is simply to believe that a day will arrive, which is the final day, and all of mankind will be resurrected and returned to their Lord on that day. Right? This is the essence of Al-Yawmul Akhir. And so this is what is wajib to believe in. And then after this point, anyone who hears any text, you hear any text which gives any details about the final day and about the events that will take place on the final day, and paradise and hellfire and the bridge, the sirat and the hawd and the mizan and so on and so forth, then it is wajib upon him to affirm his belief in that detail whenever that detail comes to him. So moving to some of the evidences, what are some of the evidences of the reward, the recompense on Yawmul Qiyamah? There are many evidences in the Quran. From them is the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Sajda, Surah 32, verse number 17, Jaza'um bima kanu ya'malun. Jaza'am bima kanu ya'malun. A recompense on account of that which they used to do. Likewise, Al-yawma tujazawna ma kuntum ta'malun. This day shall you be recompensed for that which you used to do. Al-Jathiyah 45, verse 28. Likewise, هذا كتابنا ينطق عليكم بالحق إنا كنا نستنسخ ما كنتم تعملون. This is our book, which speaks against you or over you with truth. Indeed, we used to inscribe or write or record that which you used to do. Again, Surah Al-Jathiyah, Surah 45, verse 29. So in these verses, which are just a small selection of many in this topic, we see that the issue of the deeds being recorded, the book speaking about those deeds as evidence against a person, and recompense for whatever a person did. And these are some sample ayat. There are many ayat in the Quran in this respect. We find in the Quran that after the mention of the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and belief in His Messenger, we find that which is mentioned the most and repeated often again and again and established the most is Al-Iman bil-Ba'ath wa Ruju' al-Ajsad. Belief in the resurrection and returning of the bodies. Why is this? Because we find that this is the foundation which is mostly opposed or mostly objected by the disbelievers, whether from the mushrikeen or from the disbelievers who reject this belief. So this is just in brief. Now we come to the issues, the various issues relating to each of the points that were mentioned. So the first point, the first mas'ala, the first issue is when we say nu'minu bil ba'ath wa jaza'il a'mal. Here he's referring to the resurrection of the people from their graves, and this is indicated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in many evidences. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will command the angel to blow into the sur meaning the horn or the trumpet. And so the first blowing will be the blowing when every living creature will die and perish, and a period will then transpire, which is said to be 40. And exactly what 40 it is, whether 40 days or 40 weeks or 40 years, it is not mentioned. But there will be a period of 40 that will elapse after the first blowing of the sur, which is the trumpet or a horn. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will command the angel and will blow a second time. And before this blowing, before the second trumpet is blown, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will command all of the souls and these souls will gather together in this horn, in this sur. They will gather together in this horn. And then when the angel blows them, or blows the horn, then every soul will exit and it will go to the body it is supposed to go to, the body to which it belongs. And so therefore the soul of every person will be returned to him or to her. Now, between these two blowings, between the first blowing and the second blowing, there will be certain events that will take place, and from those affairs is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will change the earth from its form, and He will change, the mountains will perish and turn to dust, and the earth will become flat, like an open plain, a huge open plain. And the people will be prepared, or the place will be prepared for the people to arrive and to come to their gathering place. All of that will be prepared in between the first and the second blowing. Then when the second blowing will take place, then before it takes place, then the water will be sent and the bodies will be revived. They will grow and appear again, step by step, until they appear perfectly developed. And so the earth will release all of that which has been buried in the earth, all the buried souls, bodies. It will release all of that and they will sprout and they will become bodies, just like you see trees sprouting, but they will have no souls. And then the trumpet will be blown. So when the bodies are raised, the trumpet will be blown, and all the souls will be given and returned to those bodies, and they will appear, having life again for the second time. And as Allah says in the Quran, فَإِذَا هُمْ قِيَامٌ يَنْظُرُونَ, and lo and behold, they will be stood, watching, observing, stood looking. So this is what is meant. When we say وَنُؤْمِنُ بِالْبَعْثِ, the resurrection, this is exactly what is meant. All of this which is indicated in the Quran and the Sunnah, it means the bodies being raised from their graves or from the burying places and raised up until they are stood on the plains on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Evidences for this are many in the Quran and the Sunnah for the blowing of the trumpet. So from them is Surah Al-Zumar, Surah 39, verses 68 to 69. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ فَصَعِقَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا مَنْ شَاءَ اللَّهِ ثُمَّ نُفِخَ فِيهِ أُخْرَى فَإِذَا هُمْ قِيَامٌ يَنْظُرُونَ وَأَشْرَقَتِ الْأَرْضُ بِنُورِ رَبِّهَا al-ayah, to the end of the ayah. The trumpet will be blown, and everyone who is in the heavens and who is in the earth will perish except as Allah wills. Then it will be blown a second time, and lo and behold, they will be looking. They will be looking. Also, in Surah Yasin 51 to 52, 36, 51 to 52, وَنُفِخَ فِي السُّورِ فَإِذَا هُمْ مِنَ الْأَجْدَاثِ إِلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَنْسِلُونَ قَالُوا يَا وَيْلَنَا مَنْ بَعَثَنَا مِنْ مَرْقَدِنَا هَذَا مَا وَعَدَ الرَّحْمَنُ وَصَدَقَ الْمُرْسَلُونَ. And the trumpet will be blown, and then they will be raised from their graves, rushing towards their Lord. They will say, woe be to us, who has resurrected us from our resting places? This is what Ar-Rahman promised, and the messengers indeed spoke the truth. And also the statement in Surah Maryam, Surah 19, verses 85 to 86, يَوْمَ نَحْشُرُ الْمُتَّقِينَ إِلَى الرَّحْمَنِ وَفْدًا وَنَسُوقُ الْمُجْرِمِينَ إِلَى جَهَنَّمَ وِرْدًا. The day on which we shall resurrect and gather and bring the pious believers to Ar-Rahman in a delegation, meaning as in an honored delegation. وَنَسُوقُ الْمُجْرِمِينَ إِلَى جَهَنَّمَ وِرْدًا. And we shall drive the criminals to Jahannam, to hellfire, like a thirsty herd of cattle is driven to drink. So these are some evidences. There are many other evidences like this. And after this, people will be resurrected to their gathering place. Second issue, he said, جزاء ونؤمن بالبعث وَجَزَاءِ الْأَعْمَالِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Al-jaza means al-mujazat, which means a person being recompensed, given his dues. And so this means for their evil deeds or for their righteous deeds. So a person will be recompensed for this and likewise recompensed for that. And that will be immediately after the resurrection. It won't be immediately after the resurrection. It will be delayed after the resurrection because there are other events that will take place in between. So from the point of resurrection to the jaza itself, the recompense itself, there are a series of events that will take place, and these will be discussed as we progress. So every person then will be recompensed, and Allah says, "Jaza'an bima kanu ya'malun," as we mentioned earlier in the ayah. Every person will be recompensed. This will be after a person will be made to acknowledge his deeds. The deeds will be presented to him. They will be accounted for. They will be weighed. The scrolls will be presented. All these events will take place, and then the jaza itself will occur. Also, he mentioned wal-ard. Al-ard means the presentation. So this is another event that will take place. This has come in evidences for this has come in the Quran. Allah says, يَوْمَئِذٍ تُعْرَضُونَ لَا تَخْفَى مِنْكُمْ خَافِيَةٌ. The day on which it will be presented to you. You will be presented, or it will be presented to you. No hidden thing will be hidden from you. Nothing will be hidden from you. فَأَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ. As for the one who is given his book in his right hand, then it continues in Surah Al-Haqqah, Surah 69, verses 18 to 19. So here, يَوْمَئِذٍ تُعْرَضُونَ. This is the presentation. And likewise in the Sunnah, عَرْضَتان جِدَالٌ وَمَعَاذِيرٌ. There are two moments of presentation. One is for arguing, and one is for making excuses. What this means is that when your deeds are presented to you, then there will be two situations. One is a situation of being able to argue about whether what is in your deeds is right or wrong. Is it actually, do you have a chance to argue? And then there's a chance to make excuses. Jidal wa ma'adhir. So the arad then, it means that a person is presented with all of his deeds, and meaning it is said to him, you did such and such, and you did such and such on such and such a day, and you did such and such. This is the meaning of al-ard. Al-ard. That everything is presented to you, the deed on such and such a day, in such and such a time, in such and such circumstances, as if a person is looking at the deed that he committed and which is being presented to him. This is what we call al-ard. And then here a person can argue and dispute or make excuses, right? So this is al-ard. Then we have al-hisab. Again, this is in no particular order. This is the order that At-Tahaawiyyah mentions them in. Then he said al-hisab. We believe in al-ard and then al-hisab. Al-hisab is al-muhasaba. Al-muhasaba, this is after a person has read his book, and he will be held to account, and it will be said, this is good, you will be rewarded for this. This is evil, you will be recompensed for this. So Allah will account a believer, hold a believer to account, and it will be easy for the believer. And as for the kafir and the munafiq, disbeliever and the hypocrite, it will be hisaban asira, difficult, hard accounting. And so the accounting then here, it is so the accounting is after a person has taken his book. The hisab is after a person has taken the book, and after he's read the book, it will occur after that. Because al-muhasaba, when we say al-muhasaba, the accounting is only after a person has had his deeds presented to him. And so it is like a shahada. The book is like a shahada against the person. And so once the shahada has been given to him, then he will be held to account. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is able to account everybody in the quickest of ways. Allah says, وَهُوَ أَسْرَعُ الْحَاسِبِينَ وَهُوَ أَسْرَعُ الْحَاسِبِينَ Surah Al-An'am, Surah 6, verse 62. Meaning that the muhasabah will take very, very quickly for all of the creation as it relates to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the next issue after this is qira'atil kitab wa qira'atil kitab. We believe in the reading of the book. This means every person will be presented his book of deeds in which all of his actions are written, and the servant will be presented to it. It will be opened in front of the servant, as Allah says, وَكُلَّ إِنسَانٍ أَلْزَمْنَاهُ طَائِرَهُ فِي عُنُقِهِ وَنُخْرِجُ لَهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ كِتَابًا يَلْقَاهُ مَنْشُورًا اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا. Every person, we have tied his decrees or to his neck, and we shall bring out for him on the day of judgment a book which will be open, spread open. It will be said, read your book, and sufficient are you against yourself as a reckoner. So this kitab here is known as the suhuf. It is the scrolls that will be spread open, and these will be distributed to every person when they are stood on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And some will be given in their right hand, some will be given in their left hand, some will be given behind their back. And so this reading of the book, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will make a person establish and corroborate that which he did of his own deeds, so that he himself is a witness on top of what is in the book. And so then after this we have al-thawab wal-iqab, belief in al-thawab wal-iqab. This is after the weighing. Right, so before this is also the weighing, al-wazan. And so we'll come to this in a short while, inshallah ta'ala. But here, the thawab and the iqab follows after all of these processes and these steps. And likewise also he mentioned here is as-sirat wal-mizan. So the sirat is a path and a way. It is placed over Jahannam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions it in Surah Maryam. He says, وَإِن مِّنكُمْ إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا كَانَ عَلَى رَبِّكَ حَتْمًا مَقْضِيًّا ثُمَّ نُنَجِّي الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا وَنَذَرُ الظَّالِمِينَ فِيهَا جِثِيًّا. There's none amongst you except that He will pass over it. It is a binding promise from your Lord. Then we shall deliver and save those who had taqwa, and we shall leave the wrongdoers in there to fall and to perish and to burn therein. So the sirat, it is come in the sunnah with some of the details that we are familiar with. It is a long path. Upon its sides are horns and hooks which snatch people. Those people to whom Allah has decreed will be snatched because of the deeds. And people will pass over it fearing for themselves. Even the prophets, when they pass over, they will say, Allahumma sallim, sallim. They will be fearing for themselves, even the prophets. So how about those which are less than them? And this path is dark, and only the believers will be able to pass over to the extent of their light. So the light that they have will be the deeds that they committed, that they performed, and the extent of their deeds, the extent of their iman, the extent of their piety in staying away from sin, that will all be light. And that light, because the path is dark, and that light will allow them to pass safely over. So the greater the iman, the greater the deeds, the greater the piety, then the more iman, the safer a person will be in passing over the bridge. And as for the hypocrites and disbelievers, the hypocrites in particular, they likewise will be gathered together in the darkness, and they will wander blindly, and they will not have any light, and they will perish and fall into the hellfire. So these are some of the descriptions of the bridge. And once again, there are some of the Ahlul Kalam, the Mu'tazila, for example, who deny the bridge because it's something that they cannot understand. How can a bridge be, as it is related, thinner than a hair and sharper than a sword? And how can people pass over that? It doesn't really make any sense to them. And again, this is on the basis of their reason. The Mu'tazila and the Aqlaniyun and the philosopher, the rationalists, the philosophers, we can't understand a bridge which has these characteristics. But as we said, we cannot analogize for that which we cannot see with that which we can see. The analogies are not, we can't make analogies. We simply have iman and make taslim. Then he mentioned al-mizan, which are the scales, and the mizan are true and real things. They have descriptions in the Quran and the Sunnah. The mizan is not a symbol for justice. Right? So the Mu'tazila say al-mizan means justice, that justice will be established. They don't believe in an actual mizan, an actual scales that will measure something. They measure the deeds. We see in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in many, many verses, وَنَدَعُ الْمَوَازِينَ الْقِسْطِ لِيَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ فَلَا تُظْلَمُ نَفْسٌ شَيْئًا وَإِنْ كَانَ مِثْقَالَ حَبَّةٍ مِّنْ خَرْدَلٍ أَتَيْنَا بِهَا وَكَفَى بِنَا حَاسِبِينَ. We shall place the scales of justice on the day of judgment. No soul will be wronged in anything. And if there was an atom's weight or a seed's weight, we will bring it out. And sufficient are we as reckoners. There are many verses in the Quran which are similar, and we find that every place in the Quran we see the plural of mizan is used. It always says al-mawazin, mawazin. فَمَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ, that whosoever scales are less. So there's an issue here, is there one scale or are there many scales? And some of the scholars say there's only one scale that will measure everybody, and other scholars say that there are actual many scales, each person has individual scales. And so that which is most correct is that the mawazin are muta'addida, there are many types of scales, because Allah said, وَنَدَعُ الْمَوَازِينَ, clearly said, وَنَضَعُ الْمَوَازِينَ, we shall place the scales of justice. And al-qist, justice, means that these scales will not wrong anybody in anything. Not even an atom's weight will be wronged, neither short nor in excess. So these are scales of justice which are accurate and valid, and no one will be wronged in any form or fashion at all. As for the scales, what they will measure three things. First of all, a person himself. A person will be measured. Physically, he will be measured. The evidence for this is in the hadith in which the companions used to laugh at Abdullah ibn Mas'ud because his shins used to be so skinny and so slight. And the Prophet said that, are you laughing at the smallness of his shins? By him in whose hand is my soul, they are weightier on the scales on the day of judgment than the mountain of Uhud. And that shows, what this indicates is that a person's physical body and what it has committed of deeds, that somehow that will be weighed on Yawm al-Qiyamah. So you might have the lightest person physically, skinniest legs and skinniest arms, but he will be weighty on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And you will have the biggest person, the weightiest person physically, but he will not weigh even like what a fly weighs in the sight of Allah, because of the deeds, of the paucity of his deeds. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that the deeds themselves will be weighed as well. Righteous deeds in one side and the evil deeds on another side. And the third thing that will be weighed are the actual scrolls. The scrolls of an individual, which will be written and which they will be weighed. So all of these three things will be weighed, and this brings us finally to the final thing, which is the order in which the events will take place. And we'll finish with this today because this finishes this section. So the order, we'll mention it very quickly. First of all, the order will be that the trumpet will be blown, people will be raised from the graves. They will be brought to the mahshar, which is the gathering place. They will wait there for a long time. They will become thirsty. They will become very fearful. They will have a very severe fear, and a long time will pass. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will there will be a hawd, and He will make the Prophet to pass by the hawd, and this will be on Yawm al-Qiyamah, at a time when people are most in need. And everyone who is upon the sunnah will pass by the hawd, and they will drink from the hawd. And anyone who is muhdith or mubaddil, who altered the religion, or who innovated something new to the religion, he will not be allowed to pass by the grave, by the hawd. And then after this, the people will wait another lengthy period of time, and once again they will be fearful, and they will wait, and this time the shafa'ah will commence. The people will go to the various prophets until they come to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and this is when the greater intercession, ash-shafa'atul uzma, will take place for the accounting to begin. That will then take place, and then the first thing that will take place after this intercession is the presentation of the deeds. Each person will be presented his deed. You did such and such and such and such a day. Then the hisab, a light hisab will take place, the first hisab. After the first hisab, the books will be given. Before the books are given, there will be opportunity to make jidal and ma'adhir, to argue and to dispute and to make excuses. Then the books will be given. After the books, the book will be read. A person will read his books. This is when the hujjah will be established. And then the weighing will take place. Once the weighing has taken place, all the people will be divided into parties. Like parties with like parties. Zalimun with the zalimun. Kafara with the kafara. Mushrikun with the mushrikun. Every rejecter of the resurrection with the rejecter of the resurrection. Every party will be brought together into parties. And then, as Allah says, اُحْشُرُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا وَأَزْوَاجَهُمْ وَمَا كَانُوا يَعْبُدُونَ. Resurrect those who oppressed and their parties, their groups, and that which they used to worship. So everyone will be gathered together like for like. And then after this, Allah will make everything darkness. Everything will become dark. And then the believers will be given their light. And with that light, they will pass over the sirat, and the hypocrites will have no light. And then once they pass over hellfire, there will be a place where they gather together, and the believers, whatever disputes they had with each other, they will settle those disputes so that there's no hatred or enmity in the hearts left. And once that has happened, the Prophet ﷺ will be the first to enter into paradise, then the muhajireen, then the ansar, then the poor and the weak people, and the rich people will be delayed right to the very end. So this is just very, very briefly, very quickly, the order in which the events will transpire. And with that, we'll conclude our lesson today, and we'll continue after this with paradise and hellfire and issues connected to them both. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.